It's the Mike Francesa podcast on the Bet Rivers Network.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the Mike Francesa podcast on the Bet Rivers Network, brought to you by Casamigos Tequila. Casamigos Tequila is brought to you by those who drink it. Well, if you're an NBA fan and you're not a Celtic fan, you weren't happy what you saw last night, because what you saw was an end to the NBA season now that the Mavs zip after falling in Dallas last night in what was I thought, good performance by the Celtics, a terrible performance by the Mavs. The Mavs lose a second straight close game. You know the headline is that Luka fouls out with the game right there to be taken with 4 minutes left, 4 minutes and 12 seconds, I think exactly, commits his sixth foul in a bevy of fouls that were just mind-bogglingly bad, okay? You don't often hear anybody criticize Luka Dončić. We know how talented he is. We know the numbers he puts up all the time. But get ready to hear it, because his game last night and his game in Game 2, the 8 turnovers in Game 2 was a close game. He was helped that night in losing by Kyrie Irving, who was terrible in Game 2. So they were both bad. But the 8 turnovers were just insufferable in Game 2. Last night was worse. And I have two very, very big culprits from last night's loss. Number one was Dončić. Number two was Kidd, who I thought had a terrible game on the bench. They come out red hot, which you knew they would. Then the Celtics rally, mostly led by Tatum, who kept them in the game in the first half. But the Mavs are still up a point at the half. And then they get blitzed in the third quarter by the Celtic threes. He's got a bad lineup on the floor. He can't match up against the threes. The Celtics decide to kill him from the perimeter. They put everybody straddling the line, and they get killed by 3. We talked about it before the series started. There were 3 keys to this series. One was Porzingis, who didn't play last night. 2 was Irving, who showed up last night. And the third was the three-point shooting, in which right now the Celtics have made 43 threes in 3 games, while Mavericks have made 22. The Mavericks are running their offense off the dribble with 2 players playing against 5 and just pounding the ball slowly and then taking a contested shot and hoping either Dončić or Irving make a contested 2 or 3, mostly a 2. The Celtics are moving the ball around the perimeter and then driving with Brown and Tatum and getting wide open threes off their dribble penetration. You went to a huddle last night where Tatum said in the huddle, hey, just keep driving it. We get a wide open 3 off every drive, which they did, which they never adjusted to, which is Kidd's fault. Plus, Kidd decides last night to play Hardaway 19 minutes. He's minus 16 on the floor in 19 minutes. He has no points and no rebounds, and he plays 19 minutes. He had only played 7 minutes in the first game. He came in the game when it was a blowout in Game 1, and in Game 2 he didn't play at all. Game 3 he plays 19 minutes, doesn't have 1 point or 1 assist. Why is he on the floor for 19 minutes? While Jones was on the floor last night for 15 minutes. Made no sense. Unless he was hurt and we don't know about it. That's a coach's decision. It was a terrible one. Plus, until they finally started to play some defense in the fourth quarter when they made their 20-2 run and pushed the offense, Dončić is slowing them down. They had to let somebody else handle the ball, which they did in the fourth quarter, and they had to utilize the other players, which they did in the fourth quarter, and they made the comeback. And then as soon as they get it to 3 points, Dončić decides to take 2 bad shots and commit ridiculous fouls. Why is he fouling Pritchard 35 feet from the basket? He's getting offensive fouls. He's fighting with the officials all night, and half the time when he thinks he gets fouled, he lies on the floor and complains, moaning and groaning while they're 4-on-5 and the Celtics are getting a layup or a dunk or a wide-open 3. His defense last night wasn't bad. It was deplorable. They took it right to him and scored. When they made him move his feet, he didn't do anything. He was lost on defense, as were most of the Mavs. I mean, Irving's defense was bad. Luka's was so bad you can't even describe it. I mean, for him to get the fouls he got, the quality of his fouls last night was so poor for a superstar player to foul out in a must-win on ridiculous fouls. He had 2 charges, he had 2 reach-ins, and he tried to draw a charge for his 6th foul. Was he out of his mind? He doesn't play any defense, and then he tries to draw a charge. And the Celtics came out in the third quarter, kept into the game by Tatum's play in the first half. Brown goes off in the second half, has a huge second half. Killed him with his penetration. They killed him with wide-open threes all night. You can't get beat by 9 threes on your home floor or 8 threes on your home floor. They made 17, they made 9. That's 24 points. You're getting outscored. The Mavs are taking contested shots by one of their 2 stars with players draped all over them, and they're taking bad 2s, and the Celtics are getting wide open 3s. You can't play that way. They gave away that game last night. They had that game at 93-90 down after being down 21 points. The Celtics were playing terribly. They finally had figured out a way to stop them, and they had 3 or 4 empty trips. And they got a couple of rough calls. I didn't mind the call on Luka for foul 6. He was moving. It was a foul on him. But the offensive, the blocking foul they called on Washington was awful. Right after that, and that was a huge possession. A terrible loss for the Mavericks, a game they had to win to make the series any kind of competitive. Doesn't matter if they played close games in 2 and 3, they gave both games away. And now the series is over. Let's be honest, we know it's over. Whether they get a big performance out of Luka and he finally makes some threes. Last night he was 1 for 7 from 3 and took terrible shots. Last night Luka opened up fast, 4 for 6. From that point, he went 7 for 21 from the floor. 7 for 21 and fouled out with 4 minutes left. Battling with the officials all night. Whining all night. Not getting back on defense all night. Slowing his offense to an absolute crawl where they need to push the ball against the Celtics. As soon as they let Washington play in the offense and let other guys play in the offense took off. They should have had Jones in the game. He never played. I don't know what he did last night to find a spot on the bench, but he only played 15 minutes. He has been a major playoff contributor for them. He played 15 minutes in a must-win game. I don't know what he did to the kid, or if he was injured, they didn't tell us. He never played. While he goes 20 minutes with Hardaway, who gave them absolutely nothing. He went 0 for 5 from the floor. He didn't have an assist or a point. And he played 20 minutes, and his plus-minus was minus 16 in 19 minutes on the floor. I don't know how you could play worse. Green plays 22 minutes and gets 1 basket. And Jones, who has been a playoff stalwart for them, plays 15 minutes last night. Takes 2 shots. They didn't discover Washington until the fourth quarter. When he hit 3 threes, he had 1 basket until then. They never gave him the ball. Plus, the most important shot in the NBA now is the corner 3. It has to be defended by every team or you lose. They don't even set up for any in this series. They haven't even made the Celtics defend it. The Celtics are basically playing 2-on-5. They don't have to worry about the other players. They're not going to see the ball. It's going to go to Irving, and he's going to dribble it and then shoot it. Or it's going to go to Luka, and he's going to dribble it and shoot it. That's it. Luka didn't make a pass until late in the game. His assist numbers are way down. And they're not even trying to get anybody else involved. All right, they got Lively off a couple of rebound dunks or a couple of inside dunks. All right, fine. Lively gave you his effort last night. He wasn't bad. But remember, they can't leave their bigs on the floor in this matchup because they're playing against 5 guys who are shooting threes. They're getting hurt in those matchups. I mean, I thought Lively did a good job last night. He had 11 points, he had 13 rebounds. He was aggressive. But he's still a matchup nightmare for them because he can't get out and play the 3. And that's all the Celtics want to do is go out there and shoot threes. And they're going to sit there willingly in this series and exchange 2s that are contested for wide open 3s. They both shoot the same percentage last night. The Celtics shoot 37 from 3. The Mavs shoot 36 from 3. But the Celtics take 46 threes, and they take 25 threes, and their threes are contested, and the Celtic threes are wide open. It's amazing they hit as many as they do. Irving hit with guys draped on him last night. He was hitting threes. I mean, the only thing you say at Irving last night is, why didn't you shoot more threes? He was 4 for 6 from 3. Luka was 1 for 7. And Luka was missing shot after shot, and he had 2 terrible shots down 3 twice, where they're still getting stops. He comes down, and I think that's where the fouls come from, frustration, because he was missing shots. He took it to the basket, and he thought he got fouled. Well, he's going through 3 guys. And he's taking terrible shots. Even for him. And there aren't many bad shots for him because his shots go in. He makes off-balance shots. He makes shots with guys draped on him. We understand that that's his game. But his game does not enhance other players. His game makes the offense completely stagnant and 4 guys watching 1 guy play. And you're not going to win that way. Not against a decent team or a good team. And you can talk about how bad the Celtic bench is, okay? And we know with Porzingis out, it's not a strong bench. But, Hauser comes off last night and makes threes that were daggers. And Tillman comes off and makes a 3. And Pritchard didn't score, but he was a pain in the neck the couple of minutes he was in there. And, White and Holiday play defense, even if they don't shoot the ball well. Or on a big... Last night it was Tatum in the first half, and he wound up with 31. Brown in the second half, he wound up with 30 at 24 in the second half. He was 38-8. And he killed them in the second half. And they both killed them off penetration. Absolutely killed them. And Brown had 8 rebounds and 8 assists to go with his 30 points. The Celtics, subtle adjustments. The Mavs, nothing. Give the ball to Luka, let him walk it up the floor, and let him somehow take a shot or get to the foul line. Don't have any... When you're playing at home and you don't get anybody else involved in the offense except 2 players, that's very tough to do. And they did not. They did not get anybody involved. I mean, when you look at them, Washington winds up with 13 points in 38 minutes of play. Lively, who just got a couple of putback dunks and a couple of lobs, wound up with 11 points in 30 minutes. Other than that, Jones played 15 minutes. He took 2 shots. Green played 22 minutes. He took 2 shots. Hardaway played 19 minutes. He took 5 shots. He missed all of them. And never had an assist. Didn't move the ball. So he did not advance a basket the whole 19 minutes he's in the game. And he's an offensive player. You can't win the way they're playing. And really, those games were winnable games in games 2 and 3, and they were just atrocious when they needed to be good. And that includes Dončić, who I thought was awful last night. I know you look at a guy and you say, oh, he had 27 points and 6 rebounds and 6 assists. He was bad last night. He took bad shots, he committed bad fouls, and he played lousy defense. And the Celtics have their title. Now to the sad news in the NBA, and that is the passing of Jerry West. You know, I would sum up Jerry West this way. If you were going to build a basketball player, he would look like Jerry West. If you were going to build him in the factory, he would look like Jerry West. You could say the same thing about Michael Jordan. Jerry West was, in so many ways, almost the perfect player. He was an incredibly good defensive player. He was an incredibly good offensive player. He was one of the great clutch shooters of all time. And he lived in an era where the Celtics had a dynasty, and he kept banging against that dynasty time and time and time and time and time again. And only the great Laker team, the team that won 33 games in a row, with West, Goodrich, Jim McMillan, Happy Haston, and Wilt Chamberlain, which won 33 games in a row, which is considered by many to be the greatest one-season NBA team in the history of the NBA. That provided Jerry with his only championship. They lost heartbreak after heartbreak to the Celtics in 7 games. They lost heartbreak to the Knicks in 7 games. It wasn't his fault. Never his fault. He even won an MVP in a losing effort. He was the logo. He was an all-star every year. And like I said, when you think about building a perfect basketball player, that's Jerry West. And on top of that, he was probably, with the possible exception of Red Auerbach, the greatest NBA executive in the history of the NBA. He had a better eye for basketball talent than anybody ever. Ever. Jerry wasn't a good coach because he was, such a competitor and he had some issues, which he was very open about mentally, that he wasn't a good coach. He didn't have the right temperament to be a coach. He wasn't made to be a coach. He was made to be a player, and he was then made to be a talent evaluator. That was the strength of Jerry West. But if you're old enough to remember him as a player, you'd be like, hey, Jerry's going to get the last shot. Jerry's going to make it. He has more nicknames than anyone in the history of sports. Zeke from Cabin Creek, Mr. Clutch, the logo, because he is the NBA logo. The logo they used forever and ever, that was Jerry West. He was brilliant in every basketball game he ever played in. And there's no compliment you can pay him that overstates it. You can't overstate how good he was at basketball. You cannot overstate it. There were players bigger, there were players who jumped higher, there were players more physical, but you can't play the game better than Jerry West did. It just isn't possible. That's how good he was. He lived a full life, 86. May he rest in peace. One of the defining legends of the sport. There are only a handful. He's one. U.S. Open. Scotty Scheffler, an overwhelming favorite. I have not seen numbers like these since the days of Tiger Woods. He has won 5 tournaments in basically his last 7 opportunities. You expect to turn it on and see him at the top of the leaderboard. Rahm is not playing. He has a lesion on his foot. So this bad year for Jon Rahm just gets worse and worse. He was 45th in the Masters. He missed the cut in the PGA. Jon Rahm, who was clearly the second best player in the world, has been almost a no-show since he went to live. I understand it's tough for these guys, I think, to stay motivated. I think it's tough for these guys to acclimate back into the big tournaments after they're on the LIV Tour. I mean, we've seen Koepka play well. We've seen DeChambeau play well. But it's few and far between. So with Rahm out and Scheffler hot, Scheffler is a 3-1. He's actually 295-1 this morning to win the tournament. In golf, that is an outrageous number. The favorite's usually 8-1. He's 2-1. Anywhere from 2 to 3-1. Schauffele's 9-1. Rory's 10-1. A couple of guys are 12-1. You got Morikawa. You got Victor Hovland. Koepka's like 20-1. They're playing it at Pinehurst, the historic Pinehurst number 2 in Carolina. So U.S. Open, which is always Father's Day weekend, plenty of coverage. And unless you have a major upset, Scotty Scheffler will be decorating that leaderboard come the weekend. And will probably be the story again this Father's Day weekend. He just became a father, as we know, for the first time just weeks ago. And he will look to celebrate it with his second major this year. He is right now head and shoulders above every other player in the world. It's not even close. I mean, he has won 5 times already this year. 5 times on the golf tour is a lot of wins. And to do it in basically short order is highly, highly impressive. NHL gets back in action tonight. Scene shifts to Edmonton. We'll see if Edmonton can somehow raise their game offensively and figure out a way to get the puck past the Panthers and get back into the series. We know that a very key performer for the Panthers might be out. Barkov, he took a shot to the jaw the other night. I don't know if he's in concussion protocol or what the head injury is exactly, but he could be out tonight. Although as tough as these guys are, he'll probably play. These hockey players are tough, man. They find a way to play these games. And getting this series even is going to be really hard for Edmonton because this Florida team is really good. And they sure look like they're on their way to a championship. One they, coveted last year when they went to the finals and obviously have, waited an entire year to get back here and get a chance to get it. And right now they're in a commanding position as they open Game 3. But this is it. This is Game 3. This is a game they have to win. When you're down 2-0, Game 3 is the game you have to win. Last night the Mavs didn't, and now Edmonton tries to see if it can. So Father's Day weekend always gives you the U.S. Open. Usually you're winding down what's left of hockey and basketball. Baseball is just heating up. Yankee Mets is around the corner. We'll see how much juice that has. Hey, we're into this. There are some tried and true scenarios for Yankee Mets. One of them is Mets badly overmatched, trying to play spoiler, trying to really, have a moment in their otherwise dismal season. And that is obviously the storyline right now for the Mets as they will welcome the Yankees in on the 25th and 26th and try to see if they can, take a couple of games from the Yankees and at least slow down that Yankee juggernaut, which continues to just rip through the American League right now. But as it rips through baseball, I should say baseball because it has done the same thing to the National League teams, except the Dodgers. And they have just overpowered Kansas City so far this week. They keep winning. But if you notice, so do the Orioles. Day in, day out. Yanks win, Orioles win. Yanks win, Orioles win. Day in, day out. So it doesn't change. The Yankees now are playing .700 baseball. They've now won 4 in a row after just having an 8-game streak before the Dodgers won 2 out of 3 against them. They're 49-21. The Orioles have 22 losses. The Orioles have won 6 games in a row. Both teams have won 8 out of the last 10. That one wins, the other wins. They are now 14 games ahead of the third-place team in the division. 14 games ahead of the Red Sox. 15 over Toronto, 16 over very disappointing Tampa Bay, which is in an unaccustomed spot at 32 and 36 and just not playing anything that looks like consistent baseball this year. Cleveland with a big lead. Texas with a big lead. The Phillies with a massive lead. 10 games over struggling Atlanta, which has no offense. Obviously lost Acuna Jr., but has gotten nothing out of guys other than struggled offensively unbelievably and has lost 5 in a row and has fallen 10 games behind the Phillies. If you notice, big leads abound. Divisions matter. And as we hit the middle of June, big leads are everywhere. Dodgers with a 6.5 game lead. Milwaukee with a 7-game lead. Philly with a 10-game lead. Seattle with a 6.5 game lead. Cleveland with a 5.5 game lead. One close race. Yanks-Orioles. One in the loss column. Get ready for a Yankee-Orioles summer. We'll see you later.
Thanks for listening to the Mike Francesa podcast on the Bet Rivers Network.